Welcome to another episode of The Drive. My name is Andy Lack. I'm joined, as always, by Geoff Fienberg. Geoff, fleeting. It's gone by so quickly. We are already at the final regular season PGA Tour event of the season, the playoffs on the horizon. Couple added extra narratives and storylines this week to track along now that only the top 70 in the FedEx Cup playoffs make it. A couple big names on the outside looking in. Your Justin Thomases, Shane Lowry's, Billy Horschel's that'll need a strong performance at Sedgefield Country Club this week to continue their season. So I would say that although this tends to be somewhat of a malaise in the golf season, we've got some fun stuff to track this week.
Yeah, always some fun little storylines. And obviously the Ryder Cup is probably going to, peer its head into every week of competition from now until we end up there. But yeah, this is it. And I'd say before we get into the Wyndham, Andy, we always knew winning was hard. Like, we didn't take it lightly. Winning out on the PGA Tour is hard. But the cavalcade of names that are pretty much going to go the season without a win, it's honestly mind-boggling. And we've had a lot more long shots come through this year than I certainly myself and the betting range I like to dip in would have appreciated, but it's been a wild year.
Yeah, it certainly has. And this has been a tournament that we've definitely seen some longer shots be able to cross the winner's circle on Sunday. I mean, guys like Jim Herman come to mind. Tom Kim was actually, I think it was still a pretty decent number on Kim last year. It was kind of before, that was his first PGA Tour win ever. So, yeah, I mean, we've actually got some pretty decent odds this week. Before we dive right into the board, Geoff, I want to give one more shout to the weekly odds checker contest that we are running over here with Odds Checker and Golf Monthly. We are giving away $10,000 for the Wyndham Championship. To be in the contest and for the chance of taking it home, you have to correctly predict the top 5 in order to win the grand prize. If multiple entrants predict the top 5 in order, the prize pot is split between them. If golfers finish tied, the order will be determined on count back, the player with the best back 9 score in the last round. If still tied, the final 6 holes will be used. So make sure to head on over to join that contest for Odds Checker. The link will be in the description as always. And now let's dive right into the odds board, Geoff. I mean, any of the names at the top have your attention? Hideki, Sungjae, Sam Burns, Russell Henley, anyone in that 30 to under range that you're looking pretty closely at?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple guys it's hard to, not take a peek at. It's very rare when we get a PGA Tour event where the chalk is 20 to 1. So there could be a case to be made. Hideki does feel like a class when in form. Sungjae lost out to Tom Kim here last year, so he'd be pretty comfortable. Obviously, now Siwoo Kim, I think, started the day a bit higher, but for obvious reasons has been super popular this week for the Wyndham. If I were to make a move here, might be a little unorthodox to other people's, but this is the type of event I could see Sam Burns playing bully ball with. And when he was on, he just took fields like this, entered them, and he bullied people for a spot. And maybe he wants to bully someone to solidify his spot on a Ryder Cup team. Haven't made the bet. I don't think I'm making the bet, but my pick of the guys near the very top would be Sam Burns.
I haven't made a move yet myself either, but I was actually surprised at the decent pricing that we've got at the top this week. Now, this is probably closer to just what pricing should be every single week, but I honestly thought that they were going to put Sungjae, Hideki, and Burns all at 14 to 16 to 1 and make us choose. I actually think that 20 on Hideki is not a terrible number. I mean, he hasn't won in a while. It's been since the Sony Open, of course, that asked very similar questions of what he'll have this week. But that was the first event of 2022. Hideki is a player who is absolutely due to cross the winner's circle. I believe he's in the top 70 of the FedEx Cup, but he could do a lot to improve his standing this week. It's not like it's a done deal that he's headed to Eastlake. I'm sure that he would like to make himself a big move. That's probably why he's playing both the 3M and this tournament the week after the Open. And I just think a golf course that asks you to drive the ball and play and hit a ton of mid to short irons, Hideki's still the best iron player in this field by like a pretty healthy margin by my numbers. So Hideki would probably be the name that I would go to at the top.
Yeah, and outside of that miscut at the Rocket Mortgage, Andy, I mean, he's as reliable as any player you can stare down in that tee to green in that approach range. So wouldn't discount it. I guess, like, just off top of mind with Hideki, normally he's the type of guy that can take off like the first leg of the FedEx Cup, right? Like he's sort of like, no, I don't even go to that first one. I'm locked in. So for him to have played last week and this week in the lead up to what you assume would be a multiple week run in the FedEx Cup. It seems like it's a lot of golf, but seems like a pretty fair number if you want to play the top.
We had this conversation last week. We're going to have it again this week. We can't get past this range without at least discussing Justin Thomas. I'm now seeing market on him being 33-1. I mean, we both kind of said it needs to be bigger for us last week. He misses the cut again. The ball striking is average. Putter's really the problem, but he's lost strokes on approach now in 4 straight starts. He hasn't done that since 2014, Geoff. So, obviously we talk a lot about how the putter is the problem, but the biggest delta for JT is how the iron play has gone so downhill this year. So do we have any more faith or confidence in JT this week than we did last?
For me, it's like a total non-look to the point where I had to clarify and correct myself in some other content when talking about JT Poston and how much I liked him. I was just referring to him as JT. I'm like, whoa, like, wait, now Poston's like the elite JT in the field. At least in my mind, that's sort of where we are. I do not care. It'll get above 40. I still won't care for it. Not for me, Andy.
What would you say that he has to do for you this week to make your Ryder Cup team? If he finishes T7, is he on your Ryder Cup team?
I'm not really sure. That's a loaded question. He has to show it. He has to carry it over a bit. Right now he's sort of like just a dead man walking for me. I don't even like look at his name. Like it doesn't even, I look right through it when staring at this odds checker grid.
I may be a little bit more optimistic than you are. I would bet him at 50-1 this week, probably. I think 30's still a little short for me. I think he's going to make this cut based on sheer willpower. I think he needs to finish like top 3 to make the FedEx Cup playoffs. It's not a situation of JT needs to hit a couple top 20s heading down the stretch. Like I'm pretty sure that based on depending what some of the other players do around him, he needs to either win or finish top 3 at this event and get some help to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And, if I was Zach Johnson, I would probably simplify this equation and just say, hey, look, make the FedEx Cup playoffs and you're in. Don't make them and you're out. It's that simple. Right. And so I think I think JT's going to put up a fight this week. Again, like I said, I think willpower can take you a really long way, but we say this all the time in football, Geoff, and there's a reason why teams in quote unquote must win spots have a losing record against the spread. It's a little too late, right? If they wanted to win, they would have done it maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I'm not here for the desperation breeding some level of brilliance. If I have to bet on it, I agree. Like he should make the cut, but JT on full tilt, like it doesn't feel like that's going to lead to many positives. Unfortunately, golf is such a cruel game. And as a lot of these top guys are, he's hard on himself as he should be at the moment. It's sad. It's unfortunate what my expectation level is there at the, for a guy that we know is so dominant.
Let's talk about some of these names in a range that we tend to go to often. I'm talking about guys like Denny McCarthy, JT Poston, your guy Ludwig, Shane Lowry, Adam Scott, Keith Mitchell, anybody in the Cam Davis, Aaron Rye, Adam Hadwin, Chris Kirk, like all of these guys in the 30 to 60 range. This is typically a range that both of us tend to pepper pretty heavily on a week-to-week basis. Are there any names that are catching your attention?
Yeah, there certainly are a few. I've never bet Denny McCarthy, seeing 35-1 on him this week, where that actually feels stronger odds than some of like the lower end fields he was a part of this year, well informed. So that's one I'm swimming around as high as 35-1 over on DraftKings. JT Poston is 40-1. He's won here. He's in great form. It's a lovely course fit. That could be the play for me. Going a little farther back, I didn't end up betting him last week, though, talking very fondly about him throughout our recording. Probably was the first guy who just missed my card last week, would have been Cam Davis. And I'm seeing him as high as 45-1. I don't, there's very few things that are fair out here, but that one relative to the field to me is speaking to me as well. So those would be the players I am looking at in that like 30 to 50 to range.
Yeah, I'll throw out Aaron Rye as well. I bet Aaron Rye this week already at 45-1. He's as low as 33 in some spots and as high as 50. So, I mean, I like him all the way down to 40. He's one of the most accurate drivers of the ball in this field. And he's had 7 performances this year where he's gained over 5 strokes ball striking. So when we're talking about outright betting, and this is an outright betting show, you want to look for guys that are having these spike performances more so than the guys that are finishing like 34th every single week. And Aaron Rye has shown elite winning upside with his ball striking. It's not a surprise that he's won a couple times on the DP World Tour as well. So I think this is a guy that it's only a matter of time before he breaks through. And I think this is a perfect golf course for him to break through. I've always seen him winning on a more accuracy over distance golf course. He's played well at Travelers. He's played well at the Players. He's played well at Mayakoba. So I think it's a pretty damn good spot for Aaron Rye.
Hard to disagree with that. Anyone making any sort of models, he's showing up. He's so proficient in all the things you ask around this place that he's showing up on everything I've put together. And I guess I should note, I do badly can't avoid Adam Scott at 35-1. But in my head, you break out these you open those numbers, and it's just the approach stats. Something just seems to be totally missing for a player, as you know, we know to be so dominant there. But 35-1 on Scott, missed a 4-footer here 2 years ago for the win.
Scott has been like statistically one of the most schizophrenic golfers over the last 2 years. Like he's there's no trends ever with Adam Scott. Like sometimes he's a great putter. Sometimes his irons are great. Sometimes his driver is great. I'm never of the belief that I still think that he's got some good golf ahead of him. I don't think he's completely cooked. And this is a golf course that he's played well at in the past as well. I'd mentioned Siwoo Kim too as well. I just think the numbers a little bit shorter on Siwoo Kim that I would have liked. Like, should Chris Kirk really be double the price of Siwoo Kim when their statistics essentially show the same thing? Is the only issue that I'm having with Siwoo Kim at like 25-1.
Totally see that. I saw him open in the 30s. He's obviously, as we mentioned, quite popular this week.
Anyone else before we talk about some guys at longer odds? I'll open it up to, the 60s and 70s. If you want to get back into the Ryder Cup narrative, Nikolai Højgaard probably has some work to do to cement his case. Signs of life for Billy Horschel last week, returning to a golf course that he has had a tremendous amount of success at. Eric Cole, Alex Smalley, Adam Svensson are all fairly buzzy names in our neck of the woods. So anyone in this range catching your attention?
Yeah, I know people don't, that whole like first click, my first bet. I was in on Smalley from Go today, Andy. Grab the
Shout out Duke.
Yeah, grab the 66-1. That was a guy that I sort of been eyeing and looking at this field, trying to, fast forward here, that I'd pegged as someone who I'd wanted to bet this week. And Taylor Moore, still seeing as high as 60-1 on the odds checker grid. Andy, I mean, there are a lot of guys in front of him that we've already spoken about, or some of them that we've skipped over. But I trust Taylor Moore to win now it's like being unfair. I got to pick a guy. I trust Taylor Moore to win more than I trust Steven Yeager, more than I trust Byung Hung An. Maybe someone who doesn't love Ludwig like I do would say that. I'm not betting Ludwig this week because I don't think it's a great course fit. That being said, he was great at John Deere. He spiked there for a couple of rounds where I thought that's just not a course fit for, his sort of A game can be neutralized there. He seems evergreen when he's on his A game, but it's a guy I'm going to skip over, likely to bet at Taylor Moore, seeing as high as 60-1 on the grid.
Yeah, they're the only other names that I like both of those names that you threw out there. Smalley will definitely be comfortable at this golf course. He's played he went to school. We get a little liberal with our home game down the road stuff. Durham and Greensboro are a couple hours apart, but in terms of like Carolina style golf courses, the Duke University course, which I've played a number of times, has a lot of Sedgefield in it, agronomically, visually, aesthetically, etc. So I definitely like the Smalley play, and he's played well here in a limited sample size. The only other name that I would throw out here before we get past 100 is Brandon Wu, who is a player that kicked my ass in high school on a regular basis, and I have had pretty high hopes for since his high school days. He went on to Stanford. He's had a couple popping spike performances already on the PGA Tour. He's done a lot of contending on like Paspalum, Mexico style events, Puerto Rico and things of that nature. But he finished 8th at this tournament last year and is coming off another really strong ball striking performance at the 3M. I bet him this week at 90-1. Stanford kid with a ton of talent that I just think is still, you can be early on. So that's the only other name I would throw out there. Any long shots you want to talk about?
And just sort of sticking with the plan this week, I would say there are a lot of guys who I'm tempted to bet, I would say, who have like the poor man's Denny McCarthy skill set. And that's not hard to replace, but there's just like, they're the same golfer as Denny McCarthy, just double the number. And you could get Eric Cole at 70. Why bet Denny at 35? Is that like a crazy thought? I mean, maybe you can bet both if you want to.
Not a crazy thought at all. I mean, I'm just never a Denny guy. I've never bet him in my entire existence. I don't have disrespect for his game. I don't think that he should be on the Ryder Cup team. Oh. I think he has a chance to win this week. But I do think that he's pretty consistently overvalued in the market. 35 is right where he should be. It's not for me this week, but I'm not going to quibble with a 35. If you're asking me, would I rather bet Cole at 70 or Denny at 35? I would rather bet Cole though.
Yeah, no, I'm saying there's like variations of like, you can get the same exact guy that does the exact same things, not as well as Denny clearly, but like their path to winning is essentially identical.
Chris Kirk is a better bet at 50 than Denny at 35.
Yeah, there's just poor man versions of Denny. Or you could say Chris Kirk, Denny's the poor man version of Chris Kirk.
I guess
would probably be the more respectful way to look at that one. But no, I mean, we'll move back. Alex Noren is a guy getting a lot of steam this week. He's still some 80-1s out there for him, which can be pretty attractive. But no, my favorite pick 50-100 would be Alex Smalley. And I'm seeing him at 66 and he comes in as low as 40 on the grid. That's my favorite pick this week, Andy. I don't have a ton. I don't know. It's put it this way, do it all responsibly. Golf is just, I haven't been showing up and I haven't been hitting it, and we're just paying the meter. And soon we're going to have to make a big refill for week 1 of football. So I'd like to get something in there before I got to do that.
I don't have a ton of long shot bets either. 110 on Brendan Todd is not a terrible number. Bezadenhout at 110.
110 on Doug Gim.
Yeah.
That's a guy that you found can find the heater here, but it's a big ask. Lucas Glover, pretty popular for a couple weeks. The approach was still on despite the miscut. Like, he's still doing what he's been doing well, as people have been backing him the past couple weeks. But yeah, as I kind of say most weeks when I do a show, my units are already allocated before I get to 100-1. And sadly, 100 to 1's been hitting way more than I ever anticipated this summer.
Yeah. Just a final note, Zach Blair at 300. That should be a little bit.
That's poor man's Denny to the extreme.
Yeah.
But it's
Zach,
the same.
Zach Blair deserves a little bit more respect than 300. He just finished top 15 at the 3M, secured his card, second place at the Travelers. That's another golf course that asked pretty similar questions of the one this week.
The names around Zach Blair are 300 to 1. Like, he deserves to be priced a bit different than that. I would agree.
Geoff, any closing thoughts? Any bold predictions? Who's your one winner this week? If you're doing the odds checker contest, who's your 1-2?
My 1-2, I would go Smalley JT, not Thomas Poston. Smalley Poston would be my 1-2.
Smalley Poston. I'll go Rye Hideki. I think Rye wins it this week. But anyway, that will do it from us. Another week in the book. Best of luck with your bets this week at the Wyndham Championship. For Odds Checker, I am Andy Lack. That is Geoff Fienberg. And we will see you next week in Memphis for the first round of the FedEx Cup playoffs.